Happy Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, November the 15th, 2022. Today's daily Bible readings come to us from, for the semi-continuous readings, Psalm 76, Isaiah 66, 1 through 13, 1 Corinthians 10, 23 through 11, verse 1. And then you could have read the complementary texts, which are Psalm 141, Ezekiel 39, 21 through 40, verse 4, and then 1 Corinthians 10, 23 through 11, 1 again. I'm going to take a look at the text from 1 Corinthians and talk about the pluralistic world of God. So what's the big deal with meat here in this passage? Why is that the big concern here? Well, shocking to say, but not everyone is a Christian, and even more so in Paul's day, and in Paul's context. He lived in a world whose dominant culture at the time was basically Greek and Roman, and so everything that went with it would be like affected him and affected the early Christians, and so yeah, he had to deal with that, live in that context, and that meant it included their gods and the religious practices that went with that, which included sacrifice of animals on a pretty large scale. Right? We think about sacrificing animals in the terms of, low power mode. There we go. We talk about sacrificing animals when we talk about the temple, right? And Jerusalem, but like all the other cultures did that too. It wasn't unique to the Jewish faith. And so they would do it, and they would do it for a lot of different reasons. So they were, producing a lot of the byproducts of that kind of sacrifice. And, it covered like all areas of their life. So it was a big deal. So often, not more often than not, I guess, but not, it was often, but not always. The byproducts of all that sacrifice and ritual slaughter would make its way to the market and onto the dinner plates of people in the cities like Corinth. And so you might go to a friend's house for a nice meal of KFD, which is KF dove, and find out that, not knowing that like this dove had been sacrificed earlier that day to, say the goddess Aphrodite or whoever. And there's a good chance your dinner had been a part of that sacrificial process. So what's a good Christian to do, right? That's what they're asking, talking to Paul about. What's a good Christian to do? You don't know. There's no way of telling. It could have just been slaughtered just for that, or it could have been part of that process. And Judaism and Christianity are pretty clear on idolatry. So as having some KFD, so to speak, tantamount to worshiping Aphrodite or whoever it was sacrificed to. Paul's advice is actually pretty pragmatic. He's kind of like, don't worry about it, right? Just go ahead and eat the meat, especially if you are a guest of non-believers, right, who are showing you, honest hospitality. He says, partake with thanksgiving, right? Don't go out of your way and to make it awkward with your host and be like, well, I need to know before we sit down for dinner, where was this meat sacrificed to a pagan god? Because if so, I can't eat and you got to provide me something else, or I just need to leave. Partake with thanksgiving, he says, for them, for their hospitality, and for the meal, and give thanks to God who provided it all anyway. He goes on later to talk about, like, hey, we know these gods don't exist, so it kind of is not an issue. But he says, if someone points out to you that your KFD, bucket meal did indeed come from the food court at the Aphrodite temple, go ahead and abstain based on what you know and on what they know. But you're doing it for the sake of the other who told you this, right? You're doing it because you don't want to harm them or cause doubt or cause confusion in them, especially if it's like he says, a newbie. You don't want to give them reasons to question, like, and just really destroy what faith that they're growing in. So here's the deal. Our pluralistic context, we don't really sacrifice a lot of animals to pagan gods anymore. But we do participate in other forms of consumption dedicated to, let's just say, newer gods. the question for us, like Paul's audience, is, what do we do? What do we know, and how does it affect us and others, right? Sometimes we're going to accidentally or unknowingly participate in things that are contrary to who we are called to be as followers of Christ. We're going to participate in maybe systems and processes and pastimes that, we might not really get it. But the problem is when you do know, like when you do come to know that, what does that mean for you? We should always be concerned about how the things we do and the things we participate in impacts the faith of others, right? Even if we're all about our liberty, right? You should still be concerned about the faith of others and how what you're doing impacts that. So anyway, that's the DBR for today. Get out, enjoy the day as much as you can, because it's like fit for ducks out there. So if you're waterproof, enjoy the outdoors today. If not, we'll see you tomorrow. Talk to you later. Boop.